Maggie, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Was born and raised there
Okay.
in a family of an Irish Catholic family. There were 6 children, 6 of us, and my mom and dad.
Okay.
2 brothers and 3 sisters. I was kind of in the middle of the family with my sister Fran, who's 14 months younger than I am, so we held up the middle.
Okay. I was going to ask you next. What was your family like? Were you close? Did you have favorite siblings or any interesting takes on your family?
I would say we were close. We're a close family. We are a close family. I have one brother who is deceased who died a year ago, but a close family. We were close in age, and favorite siblings. I think each of them are my favorite for different reasons.
Okay.
They're each of us are individual, and so I have a special relationship with each one of them.
Okay. Was your family more of a nuclear family or was it more of an extended family?
It's an interesting question. In many ways, I think we were an extended family. Growing up in Milwaukee, my mother's family name was McCormick, and I had many cousins in Milwaukee, and was very aware of them. And at family gatherings, we'd get together with them. Many of them of my mother's cousins were in either law or were in education, were in politics, were physicians. One of her cousins was clerk of the circuit court for more than 30 years. So I was always aware of that. And then when I went to high school, I had cousins that I was in high school with at the same time.
Okay. Speaking of school, wait. What did your parents do for a living?
My father was an insurance salesman, and he also worked for the county highway department during the wintertime. And he was a radio dispatcher. So
Oh,
he would
really?
send the plows out during snowstorms that Wisconsin often gets.
Huh.
And they didn't have iPads or email or anything in those days, but he was the radio dispatcher, so he would send a plow out, and then if a plow would get stuck or would need somebody else to come out, he would send another plow out. And I can remember that there were times when 2 days might go by before we would see him because of the snowstorm. They'd have to get the highways and the roads cleared. But that was seasonal.
Okay.
Otherwise, he was an insurance salesman. My mother, most of the time, was a stay-at-home mom. Periodically, she picked up jobs as I was growing up at different times, but for the most part, she was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay. Let's go back to schools. What schools did you go to?
I grew up and went to school at St. Rose Grade School, St. Rosalima Grade School,
Okay.
and which was staffed by Cincinnati Dominicans.
Okay.
And then went to high school at the Cathedral High School, again staffed by Cincinnati Dominicans. So I was taught by Cincinnati Dominicans through grade school and high school.
Okay. And beyond that?
And beyond that, after I entered the community, well, I took courses at, my first year out of high school, I took courses at UW Milwaukee.
Okay.
Kind of buying a little bit of time. I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my life and thinking about religious life, but wanted to really check out a number of different communities. I wasn't quite sure which one I wanted to join. And there were so many different communities, especially in the Milwaukee area. There are a number of mother houses. So I took some courses after I entered the community and continued my college courses. We studied at the Mound, and then later went to Mundelein College in Chicago.
Oh, really?
To study for a degree in religious studies. And it was Sister Nona who really made that happen. It was after Vatican II, of course, had happened previous to that when I was in high school, and the community was at that time thinking it would be a good idea for some of our sisters to have degrees in religious education. And Edgewood didn't have an undergraduate degree in religious education. They didn't have a department of religious studies at that time. And Rosary College didn't either.
Really?
Quickly, they were establishing them, but they didn't have them yet. But Mundelein did, the BBMs did, and so she connected me with them, and I was sent off to Mundelein. That's where I got my undergraduate degree.
Oh, interesting. Were you a sister at the time then?
When I was studying.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
Right. What were your intellectual interests when you were a youngster, and whose thought influenced you?
That's interesting.
And this could be in college or
Yeah, as a kid.
Yeah, or whenever when you're
Well, I've always
in your
loved
school.
reading.
Okay.
I can remember before I could read. I can remember sitting, I think it was with a Sears catalog that we probably had at home, and looking at the pages, and I don't believe that there were a lot of pictures. They were mostly drawn, if there were any pictures. But I remember thinking to myself that someday I was going to be able to read those words. I love reading. And grew up, I think most of us got that from my mother especially. She rarely went anywhere that she didn't have a paperback book in her purse, and we all kind of picked up that habit.
Okay.
So as a kid, I loved I liked mysteries, so Nancy Drew novels I loved. Cheaper by the Dozen was one of my favorite. I think I identified with it. Coming out of a large family.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun and lots of fun escapades, and I liked history. So,
Okay.
reading.
Okay. Back to your religious life. Why did you enter the Dominican order? What set them apart?
Well, growing up, at the time that I was growing up, especially in the early 60s, was a time of incredible change in our country and in the church. Vatican II happened when I was in high school, as I mentioned. That was very exciting for a young person. It was probably more exciting for me than it was for my parents or those who were older who were wondering what all these changes were and had spent a life with a church that hadn't had change for centuries. I found them very exciting, fresh, new ideas, and was excited to be a part of it. Also, it was a time during the 60s and the early 70s, it was a time of change for women in our country and the women's liberation movement. And so being alive during that time, being a young person, it was a time when the Kennedys President Kennedy was elected. Robert Kennedy was very influential. Martin Luther King. It was a time of a lot of change, a lot of energy. For a person like myself, listening to President Kennedy, encouraging, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do to help make a better world? I was very inspired by that, as I'm sure many young people were at that time. Many people were. But especially it's a question for young people in particular, thinking, well, what am I going to do with my one precious life? And I knew I had many more options were starting to come about than had been previously available especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to think that there weren't a lot of limitations. I could do maybe anything that I wanted to do, and I needed to look outward to those possibilities. So that led me to, in religious life, with the changes that were happening, and having been educated by the Cincinnati Dominicans, I found those women, one, educated, smart, wonderful teachers, teachers who engaged me in life and in life around me, and thinking about that. They were also people who were, I found, just basically really happy. And as a young person, I think oftentimes you look at those who are your teachers and our leaders, and you do look at them and wonder, are they really happy doing what they're doing? And that was important to me.
Okay.
I thought whatever I did, it might be important to be happy doing that. But what I did was I started looking around at different communities too, because I knew I had options, and I like options.
Mm-hmm.
So I visited the Notre Dames in Milwaukee, the Notre Dame Sisters. I visited Little Sisters of the Poor, checked out the Glen Marys, which are missionary community that do missionary work in the United States, especially in Appalachia. I found those ministries exciting and adventuresome. But when I visited the different mother houses, the Franciscans, they were all very, very welcoming places. And but I have to say, I also should tell you too, I have a sister who is in a Cincinnati Dominican and preceded me in the community. And so the Cincinnati Dominicans were not foreign to me at all. I had an aunt who is deceased who was belonged to a community in Ladysmith, Wisconsin, and so I had a lot of choices. When I visited the mound, when my sister was at the mound in the novitiate, I felt right at home.
Oh, really?
And I realized that difference. I think it probably was cultural, somewhat, in the sense that at least at that time, not so much today, but at that time, that it was a very Irish, a strong Irish, many Irish people in the community, and I think I just felt very much at home.
Okay.
I don't know that I would have named it that way at the time, but looking back, I think that was important.
And how old were you when you joined the Dominican Order?
I was 20 when I entered the community. I had graduated from high school. As I said, I took a year and worked and took courses and did a little investigation of my own exploration.
Okay. Were you in Milwaukee when you joined?
Yes, I did. I joined from Milwaukee.
Okay.
The mound's not very far from Milwaukee.
Yes. Okay.
Also, in those days, it was a day's drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before you came to Edgewood, what were you doing? Did you have any jobs before you came to Edgewood?
Oh, I had quite a few jobs before I came to Edgewood. I had 16 years teaching in secondary education, teaching religion.
Oh, really?
In secondary education at Regina High School, first in Minneapolis, and then at Trinity High School in Chicago, and then at Dominican High School in Whitefish Bay in Milwaukee. I was there for 10 years. That was the longest I had been anywhere. And then I was invited by our community to be vocation director for our community. So I was vocation director for 7 years. And that was a very exciting ministry. I had the opportunity to travel around the country, engaging and meeting a variety of many young women who were thinking about religious life, but even more so of meeting with our sisters in different parts of the country and seeing our ministries. We often would hear of different ministries our sisters were in. But I had been in education, so I really hadn't seen firsthand the places where they were and the communities that they were surrounded by. So that was a wonderful opportunity for me.
Okay. When did you get to Edgewood, and what was it like when you got here?
I came to Edgewood in 1991.
Okay.
And actually I came at the invitation of Sister Stevie. She was looking for someone to partner with her at that point. She was looking at retirement at that time. She was not real well, but thinking about retirement, and so she said, how about coming to Edgewood? And that's another story in itself. But I came and interviewed. Also at that time, Dr. Evan was considering of creating a mission office.
Okay.
And so both invitations, working with Stevie, especially in the Education Parish Service Program and coordinating that program, I picked up that program from her and coordinated it for the next 17 years.
Really?
And then really developed the mission office from scratch. Colleges and universities at that time didn't have a mission office. I didn't have colleagues like colleagues in other colleges, so I had to create it somewhat from scratch, but I had a good foundation in having been vocation director because it really all focuses on the mission and the heritage, the tradition of the sponsoring organization. After Ex Corde Ecclesiae happened, and that document came out from the Vatican later in the mid-90s, that's when other colleges and universities began to realize that they needed to create mission offices to focus on institutionalizing the mission in their institutions.
Did you help them out with that in any fashion? Did you help any other colleges?
I hope so.
Okay.
I was part of many conversations, workshops. I participated in giving some workshops in some different colleges and universities, and filled out a lot of online forms that they would send me asking different ideas, different things that we were doing. So I hope that I was helpful on that. What was Edgewood like? Edgewood, my first year here was when Edgewood broke ground for the library.
Oh, really?
So that was the first thing that happened in the fall, and I watched, that was the first building that came up when I was here.
Okay.
It was
That must have
pretty
been quite exciting.
Mm-hmm. It was very exciting.
Huh. Do you have any good Edgewood stories? Like, do you have any Sister Stevie stories or anything? Or anything that comes to mind that you found, worth sharing?
Oh, there are so many stories. And Stevie was just an incredibly wonderful, engaging woman for everyone here at the college. I often wondered how she ever got to an appointment or a class or where she was supposed to go on time, because she would engage everyone, personally, on her way, going through the halls, and anyone who knew her had that experience. It was every day. It was wonderful. And working with her was exciting, it was fun, it was educational, it was inspiring. I think the special stories of Edgewood are embedded in our students, in the faculty and staff, everybody those who have been here, in our alum, and what they are doing with their own lives because of the education, and the inspiration that they gleaned when they were here. I think that's hard to capture, but I do believe those are the special stories of Edgewood. And they're in the past, they're in the present, and they're going to be in the future.
Oh, excellent. What are you doing currently?
Currently, I'm doing what I've been doing since I arrived.
Okay, no retirement for you right now, right?
I am the Assistant Vice President for Mission Integration, and I have just a wonderful job. As you know, I get to engage with everyone in the college around the mission of Edgewood. I get to visit with students and in classes and talk about the mission, the history of the Dominican order, the history of Edgewood College. We engage with the values and what those mean and how they might be applied in their own lives. Engage with faculty and thinking about how to integrate the mission and the vision and the values in their own curriculum. I get to have conversations with potential faculty around mission and what that might mean in the prospective job that they're looking at.
Okay. What is your vision for the Edgewood College of the future?
Oh, I think my vision would be what it's been from the past. Edgewood has always had a vision, and again, I do believe that vision is embedded in the mission and in the heritage. You know, heritage tradition is only as good as it is useful. And the Dominican tradition is over 800 years old, so it's been useful for a long time. Through many centuries, through many, many generations, through many histories worldwide. But the mission of the college, which is embedded in the mission of the Dominican tradition, calls each of us in every age to address the needs of our times. So the vision that I have for Edgewood, that Edgewood will continue to do that as it's doing that today, as it's done in the past, as it's addressed the needs of its times. And in our times, I think of how we're addressing the needs of, for instance, of new immigrants who are coming to our country, who are coming to Madison, to Edgewood. I think of how we're addressing the needs of returning veterans that are new today. How we're addressing the needs and the questions of our times of environment, of economics, how much is enough, and when will we know that? The needs of immigration, who's welcome around the table, and what do we need to know in order to say all are welcome, as we're addressing the needs of our church. So a world that is constantly changing, that needs minds and hearts coming together, studying together, dialoguing together, and arriving at some action plans to move forward. That will, of course, raise the next question.
Okay, I was gonna say of the five core values of Edgewood, which speaks most to you?
It's hard to choose one of them. I guess I always think that truth, the search for truth, is, of course, when I think another word for Dominican for me would be the search for truth. The search to discover the God who is present in everything all the time, that is revealed and is revealing in every person, in every engagement, in all of life, every day that is new. And I think, as I look at the mission, I think of the mission is what we do. I think of the values is how we do it. So through partnerships, through compassion, bringing our hearts as well as our minds to every endeavor, living with our eyes and our ears open to the other, in a community of learners. I don't know. Have I missed any of the values?
No.
But I think they're all. I think they work together.
Okay.
So.
Interesting. And lastly, what wisdom would you like to impart?
What wisdom?
Yes.
Oh. You know, I don't know. I think it's such a privilege to be part of the life of a place like Edgewood, and to be engaged with, in our time, with the people that we get to engage with every day. And I guess my wisdom would be to continue to search for truth with I hope what I try to do is do that with my eyes and my ears open every day. Sometimes they're open a little bit wider, and sometimes my ears are open a little bit clearer. Some days are more challenging than others. But I think as we live with the expectation that there's something more to learn, that's what creates the engaged life for me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. This was fun.